When I'm gone, no need to wonder if I ever think of you. The same moon shines, the same wind blows. For both of us and time is but a paper moon.
The Interplanetary Podcast. The exploration of space for the benefit of all mankind.
Your hosts here in North Devon, Matthew and George Russell.
Do. Oh yeah, baby, Brian May. Yes, it's Brian May's birthday today. Happy birthday, Brian May. He's 74 today, George.
Wow.
I can honestly say it's probably Brian May's influence that means I'm doing this podcast, and definitely his influence for my other podcast, which is what, George?
It's Recovering Queen.
Which is all available on Spotify and other hosts.
I can't see why Brian May's existence had an impact on that, though.
On which one? On Recovering Queen?
On Recovering Queen.
No, it's more obvious on this one because, of course, he is an astrophysicist, PhD, who gave up his PhD because instead of looking at the stars, he wanted to be a star.
You could have done both.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Brian May. We love you. Right. George, I've got an interview today. Very interesting couple of people. Antonino Salmeri and Jenna Tawana, we've had Jenna on before, but they're talking about EAGLE. Now, EAGLE is an acronym. Can you try and guess what it is?
Every animal got legs.
Every animal's got legs.
And then the E is silent.
Oh, okay. It's a good stab at the acronym. It actually stands for Effective and Adaptive Governance for the Lunar Ecosystem, which I should put all the links to. It's a very, very cool report done for the Space Generation Advisory Council. I'm going to be grilling them about it in a second. George, thanks very much for filling in again. You're a legend. High five. There we go. That's the sound of high-fiving in the studio. Right. So, George, have you heard of two things? Rogue planets.
Yes.
And micro-lensing.
I have heard of that as well.
Have you? Oh, okay then. Right. What's a rogue planet?
A rogue planet's basically a planet that doesn't have a parent star. So basically a planet that's either been formed around a star and then just got shot off.
Okay.
That's pretty much...
I was going to say, they couldn't form except around a star, could
yeah,
they?
true. They could form around a black hole. Or in a nebula.
Yeah, I suppose they could. Yeah.
Probably quite rare, though.
Yeah. They're normally formed in a solar system like our own and flung out.
By another star or another asteroid or something like that.
Well, another planet. Normally, another large planet sort of disturbs its orbit, and I guess that's probably what happened in the early solar system. There was probably other planets, and one of them's now gone rogue. Do you know what the first ever rogue planet was?
I don't know.
It's called Rogue One. Because they made a movie out of it. Oh.
It's just tumbleweed.
Just tumbleweed, right? Okay. Moving on. So, what about micro-lensing then?
Micro-lensing is a bit like gravity lensing around black holes, where the gravity's so strong that it actually acts like a lens, made of glass or something like that. But with planets, you get a little bit of it, and that little amount can be used to see planets that are really far away.
And who reckoned that you would see it?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know who reckoned you could. I mean, a lot of people, I assume.
Well, yeah, a lot of people, but who was the first? I'll give you a clue. He's the most famous physicist.
Was it Einstein?
Yeah, Einstein, predicted it 85 years ago. It's a consequence of general relativity that you would get microlensing. I don't think he thought it was ever going to be possible because it's so how ludicrous is it that we're able to do it?
Yeah, that is quite... It's weird that you can... It's easier to see a planet that way than to just look at it straight up.
Yeah. But it's the chances of seeing like a planet just so happen to crossing a star seems to be ridiculously
Although there is a
remote.
lot of them.
There's a lot of them, yeah. But it turns out that there's way more than you think. In fact, there may be more rogue planets than there are.
I meant stars.
Unrogue. Oh, well, there's a lot of stars too. But I think there may even be more rogue planets than stars.
There's more rogue planets than there are planets around a star.
Well, in other words, there must be more rogue planets than stars then.
No, but
Yeah.
no, because there are maybe there are because there's probably more planets than there are stars.
Oh, yeah, gotta be.
Maybe.
Well, it seems that most star systems have got planets around them.
True, but some star systems have multiple stars.
Oh, God damn it. Yeah, but not meant. Well, that's an interesting point.
That would
but,
require research. And
Yeah, I think
just can't be bothered.
We can't be bothered right now because you may have guessed we're in a bit of a rush because it's all very last minute. This one, George. So anyway, the reason why we're talking about these two things is because there was a paper recently called Kepler K2 Campaign 9 Candidate Short Duration Events from the First Space-Based Survey for Planetary Microlensing. And it's really interesting, this, because Kepler is a space telescope, as well, you know. Yes?
I do know that Kepler is a space telescope.
Yeah, so and obviously it's been amazing for finding exoplanets. But one of the campaigns it did is, and it's not designed to do this, by the way, but they thought, well, let's see if in principle it's possible. They pointed it at the center of the Milky Way, where there's literally millions and millions and millions of stars, right? In a field of view. So you can look at that for ages and try and spot micro lensing events. And like Kepler's not really designed to do it.
It usually uses the method where you wait for it to go in front of the star, but instead of looking for lensing, you just look for a slight dimming of the star.
But you can work out, that's because instead of dimming with micro lensing, you get what?
Refraction.
No, you get brightening. It actually brightens the star.
Due to refraction.
Oh, yeah, yes, but due to refraction, but instead of dimming it, it brightens it up.
Yeah.
So Kepler's not quite designed to do that, but obviously it can do that because it's sensitive enough. So that they've used these new techniques of sorting through the data to try and find stuff. So this is a paper led by a Manchester University. A team at Manchester University, but Ian MacDonald, who's now at the Open University. And yes, this is 2016 data from Kepler. And they've found some candidate events that could be Earth-sized rogue planet micro-lensing events.
Earth, and not Earth-sized, but also would it be in the area that can support liquid water, or?
Well, no, but that's the whole point. They're rogue, remember? So they're not around a star.
Right, yeah. So,
But here's the interesting thing. So do you think a rogue planet could have liquid water on the surface?
if it had like enough warming within the center, then it could definitely have liquid water.
Yeah, this is interesting, isn't it? So yeah, you can have, like we talked about a few weeks ago about geothermal energy from radioactive decay. So yes, your planet can have plenty of heat, enough for liquid water to be on the surface, which I think is amazing.
Well, there are billions of forms of life on Earth which are unaffected by the sun.
By photosynthesis, yeah, but like the ones that are down on hydrothermal vents.
Earth could be kicked out of the solar system.
All photosynthetic life and any life that relied on it would die.
Yeah.
But there'd still be all that life that was under the surface that's on that energy gradient of
It's actually taking energy from the center of the Earth. But I guess if humans learnt to farm that, you could
just about survive.
Just about survive, yeah.
Yeah. But it's not just that. Get this as well. A lot of these rogue planets, and this would be the most genius discovery ever, a lot of those rogue planets may have maintained their moon when they got chucked out. So say if Earth did get chucked out, actually there'd be some occasions where it would maintain the moon with it. And so you could have gravitational heating that could sustain life.
How does gravitational heating work then?
Gravitational tidal effects could push and pull the inside of your planet or moon, heating the surface up. So
I guess the movement of tide, like water, tides of water
as well, would really help life as well.
Yeah.
It's it's actually really interesting. So there actually may be rogue planets with life on them.
I guess all planets could have life on them.
Yeah, But I must admit, I just thought they would be these cold, dark worlds.
Yeah,
like,
that is
hurtling through the void.
surface will always be like that, but it's the core can be whatever it wants because.
But the thing that stresses me out, George, is that the fact that there's these planets that are out there. That what would happen if one entered the solar system?
Kirker Blitz or whatever, the YouTube channel, you know, the kind of infographic.
Yeah.
I think he did a video about what happens if a rogue planet did go into the solar system, and there are certain events where it could kick out Earth, or using gravity.
I reckon it would be bad news. I think it would be pretty awful.
Yeah, I probably in some cases, yeah, maybe. But like the thing is, like the margins of error are so large that a slight change could mean the difference between being like a tiny speck in the sky and like actually hitting Earth.
Yeah. Well, there's a film called Melancholia. That's quite a good film, actually, and it's very brilliant imagery right at the beginning, and it's about a planet called Melancholia entering and actually impacting Earth, and the last few days before that happens. But yeah, I guess so. I guess because the solar system is vast, I suppose you could have a planet whiz through, but it's the all the planets are
probably already has, if you think about it.
Yeah,
if there are that many,
it'd be interesting.
Rogue planets. And also the moon is theorized to have been created by a Mars-sized rock hitting Earth.
Yeah,
but
that was probably one of the right in the early formation of the solar system. All the orbits don't sort of settle out into their nice.
Well, there
orbits.
were probably tens of planets in the solar system at one point.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that because there's the Nice model, isn't there? But where I think there was a few, and and Mercury has had it looks like it's the core of a planet that's been all smashed off. And of course there's old Psyche, that massive metal object that's out in the asteroid belt. Yeah, because that's probably a core of a planet.
Mercury's really dense, which would suggest that, because despite being much smaller than Mars, it has the same gravity.
Yeah, exactly. So Mercury probably is like Psyche, a core of a planet that's had its outer edges smashed off. It's not, but that's not a slam dunk, by the way. Those both are but theories. But we'll know, won't we, when they go out to Psyche? We'll know more about that. That's one of my favourite missions.
The planet.
We could just ask the planet, hey planet, what happened? Hopefully it'll answer. If panpsychia is true, that might be true.
But, I don't think being conscious just allows you to then
communicate with it
and remember things.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So anyway, I mean, this Kepler telescope usage is like really, really clever, and it's managed to sort of get some of these events, and they look quite compelling. And it's more of a sort of way of saying, yes, this is actually possible. We can probably find rogue planets and have a look at them using similar techniques. So of course they're going to be flying other telescopes up soon. So that should be pretty cool. So the one that's going to be huge for this is the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope. That's going to be flying soon. That's going to be a big one. And of course, ESA have got their own Euclid mission as well. So they will be looking out, and they're optimized for micro lensing events. So we could see a whole like host of this kind of thing coming up. So that, got to admit, that's pretty exciting, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, if there are rogue planets which are closer than our nearest solar system other than our own, that could serve as like a kind of midway point for interstellar travel, because right now, to go to the closest star, we have to travel 4 point something like light years.
Yeah.
But if there's a rogue planet that's like
coming our way,
1 light year, we could land a probe on that, and it would at least serve as like some kind of like stepping stone,
like a transport device through the.
Well, not like a transport, because if you're landing on a planet, you're already at the velocity that it is. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't.
Oh yeah,
doesn't really work like that.
No, yeah, you're right. Well, yeah, damn it.
No, because I guess you get like a boost.
You maybe get a little bit of gravitational.
Like if it did a suborbital maneuver of the sun, then it may be the extra mass gives
You
it.
can get a little bit of a kick off it. Yeah, but
I don't think.
no. How hard this is to do, by the way, is and it's all to do with the cacophony of noise of looking directly into the center of the galaxy, and it's like lots of stars and dust and everything else to sort of compensate for. And the Ian from Manchester, he suggests that it's about as easy. It's about as easy as looking for a single blink of a firefly in the middle of a motorway using only a handheld phone.
That is quite hard.
Yeah, that's very hard, isn't it? So, yes, that was my Manchester accent for anyone who doesn't know what a Manchester accent is like. Did you like it?
I didn't know until now.
Okay, that's a bit like a Manchester accent. It's a bit like Liverpool, but they would never admit it. Anyway, we've rabbited on. I thought that's definitely worth having a look at. It's a really, really cool paper, and it's exciting, isn't it? Rogue planets and the thing that blows my mind is the fact that you could have liquid water on them. There could be people living. There might be people living on a rogue planet thinking that's the norm.
Yeah, they might be thinking, whoa, it must be so dangerous living on one of those planets that's next to a
round
star.
a star that be kicking out solar.
It's like
radio.
burning.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. It's like, what are those things?
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, it is just a frame of reference. You know, if you've evolved on a planet that doesn't have a star.
Yeah. It's almost quite exciting zipping through the universe, not tied to a star.
Yeah, I suppose the star isn't.
You're actually going somewhere.
Our star isn't really tied to anything, though. As in,
but
it's moving around.
Yeah, but we have to sort of go around with the star in orbit around the galaxy, whereas these rogue planets might be going in any direction. It might be going across the galaxy.
Outside of solar systems, things are so far away that you can be moving literally light years.
Well, you could be moving,
second.
and still not. Yeah, it's like who knows? Who
knows how fast I'm traveling?
Well, who knows when you'll ever come across anything? That's a very vast place.
The sky stays pretty much the same.
Oh, no,
for billions of years.
Yeah. George, would you like to hear my interview? Well, it's more of a discussion with Antonino and Jenna from the Space Generation Advisory Council.
What makes it a discussion rather than an interview?
That's a really good point. We'll see. What I wonder what the listeners will think.
Yeah.
Will the listeners think it was a discussion or an interview?
Write in the comments down below.
Write in the comments down below. Right. Akutai.
The Interplanetary Podcast, putting the ace back into space.
Right. So I'm joined on the Interplanetary Podcast by Jenna and Antonino from the Space Generation Advisory Council, but more specifically, Eagle. I'm going to let one of them explain. So I'm going to pick on Antonino because he was the first one into the Zoom chat today, and I'd said that he was going to get kudos for doing so. Well, first of all, just give us a kind of rough overview about what Eagle is.
Right. So thank you, Matt, for having me today together with Jenna in this Interplanetary podcast. I'm really excited to have a nice chat with you about EAGLE. So EAGLE stands for Effective and Adaptive Governance for a Lunar Ecosystem. It's an acronym for an action team that is being created by the Space Generation Advisory Council now 1 year ago. So we are celebrating our first birthday at the end of June with the purpose of advocating for the position of the young generation for the development on lunar governance, right? And not just any lunar governance, but effective and adaptive lunar governance. So the EAGLE action team has been developed by SGC because we thought and we found that there was a gap in the discussion on lunar governance. And this gap was that nobody was providing the input and the thoughts and the ideas of the young generations. And so there was a brilliant discussion out there, but there was this part missing. And since everybody is talking about going to the moon sustainably and enabling a new era of sustainable space exploration, I asked myself what sustainability means. What is the real implication of sustainability? And in short, it is being able to hand over to the next generation, right? It means that whatever we're doing now could be done in the future by the people who will follow us. And so how can you actually develop any sustainable regulation, any sustainable exploration, if you're not involving the people who are supposed to inherit the results of that sustainable exploration? And so that's how the idea started. I spoke about it with the leadership of SJC. They haven't heard of it before, but they were happy to see how that thing would go. And so we created a team. We made a selection of people. We ended up with the 14 bright minds that we have today, including obviously Jenna. And we started working. So the whole thing was very much experimental. But I have to say, after 1 year, it went pretty well. And so we produced a lunar governance report. And the report has been presented at the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space in order for states to consider our ideas for the regulation of the moon. And among those, we came up with a proposal for a new instrument governing or potentially governing the use and exploration of the moon, which is the idea of a lunar governance charter, which is something we can talk about better maybe later today. But the idea was really to reinvent a little bit the narrative of lunar governance through the work of the Eagle team. So that is in extreme summary what we've done so far.
No, absolutely. So my first question then is who are the sort of normal people that would take charge of this kind of thing? Because you've got you like you said, you've got this young generation coming through. So presumably there's an older generation who are normally sort of looking at this kind of stuff. Who is that, and were they doing a good job?
I like for Jenna to go and take
oh God, do you have to? So I to be honest with you, I think I actually realized how fragmented this is until we started doing our work. And the first phase of our work was actually interviewing a lot of people who have been thinking about this. So we interviewed, Mike Gold, who thought a lot about the Artemis Accords. We interviewed people from Moon Village Association, from Moonkind. So there's a whole host of people thinking about it, ranging from space agencies to nonprofits to individual countries to individuals themselves. But it feels like a lot of people are thinking about it, but there's still there was a lot of people are kind of thought about pieces of it, and so there has been a lot of thinking ranging from a lot of different actors, but they really were fragmented. And so our first kind of point of call that Antonino directed the team to do is kind of have these hearings or these meetings with people where we could understand what they've been thinking about, why their rationale, and then we can also kind of ask them, what do you think going forward? Where do you disagree and where do you agree with other actors? And that little fact finding was so important, right? Because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but at the same time we needed to gather inputs before we could have a good output, right? So it had a lot of thinking had been done, but actually trying to figure out the links between it, where it overlaps, where it diverges, was something pretty new and quite difficult. But we got there in the end.
Because I guess what happens, and I think that probably anyone who works in an office will be able to sympathize with this, is that you get silos of people who love the blue sky thinking element of it and go off and don't even tell the other people that they're doing it sometimes, and sort of blue sky an idea and reinvent the wheel. And really that the difficult work isn't that, because that's the exciting work, isn't it? And I guess so you actually went out and consciously did that. You went out and said, look, lots of people have been doing blue sky thinking work, but it's not joined up. So that was one of the sort of first things that you spotted. Have I got that right? In summary of what you just said? Yeah.
Indeed. For me, that was a starting point, actually, because I work in this, right? So I'm a space lawyer. I do research on lunar governance and space resources specifically for my job. So even before doing the hearings, I already knew and I had the sense that this was very fragmented and that there was nobody trying to talk with the others. And this happens both at the policy level and also at the technical level, because you have so many people currently planning missions on the moon. And somehow they all act as if they're going to be the only one there or the first one there. And so nobody's actually thinking, what if there's going to be another person operating next to my area, right? What am I going to do there? Right? And nobody, I can swear to you, nobody thinking about this, only very few people. So I said, okay, maybe it's worth talking with these people separately and then being the contact point, right? This is what I imagine we could do with the hearings. And I have to say it was a fantastic experience because we reached out to 21 different stakeholders. We interview around 30 people in total because some stakeholders sent more people. And in the end, what we found out is that they haven't really thought about it. Everyone was very much focused on their own thing, which makes total sense, right? We're still in a very preliminary stage. I don't want to blame anybody. I think, it's not so easy to try and have always this systemic approach. But this is one of the value, the contributions, the unique contributions of our report, that you will find a section where we say, okay, we've looked into this, we've spoken with the people, we studied the documents. Those are the things in common. Those are the things that we disagree upon. And now we can finally have a meaningful conversation about building upon the agreements and solving the disagreements.
I think the other thing which is really interesting about the work we did is not only did we approach people from all over the world, ranging from Japan to Australia, to America, to Chile, we also reached out to people from all different kind of functions and backgrounds. And it was so interesting having these discussions, even within our team, right? Because we are engineers, we're lawyers, some people are prioritizing commercial, other team members were prioritizing scientific, and kind of the same, but not the same. And it was our role to try and, put our own personal, priorities aside, and then really think through for everyone what could be the right answer. So as well as, geography, there was function, there was, public, private. It was interesting.
Yeah.
It was so good though.
Yeah, talking of stakeholders, this is going to be a very short point, is that a couple of years ago, I had a chap called Moribar Jar on, but he talks about, stakeholders being like Aborigines and people like that, Aboriginal people who look up at the night sky and they don't have a choice about, they're left out of the conversation. Might there be communities that are sort of left out of your conversation, even though you think you've gone to all the stakeholders? But can you ever be sure that you really are getting all the stakeholders?
It's a very good question. I'll give you my answer, but I really would like to hear also what Jenna says. This is the thing. There are some communities which will be very hard to reach out. And I'll be very honest now, for instance, that although we had 21 interviews with so many different people, we didn't manage to get anybody from Africa, although we tried. We got invitations out, but we never got the reply because maybe this country think this is not of their immediate interest, or maybe we didn't find the right people. And so that's already an example of a community that we didn't manage to include in our report, although we had a member of our team, Nuria, is from there, so is from Kenya. So we got that perspective in our team, but couldn't get it when we were looking for stakeholders. So exactly taking on your question. And then another community that I think it would be difficult to reach is the indigenous one. But I think they deserve to be heard because they share a sort of an emotional and spiritual connection with the moon. There are many communities on Earth who look at the moon as an important symbol of the universe, or as a goddess, perhaps even. And, although I understand that it's very difficult to reach out to them and to find a compromise between the fact that we want to do activities there and the fact that they maybe think of the moon in sacred terms, but at least, we want to find a way to include you so that we can address concerns that you have in the best possible way that we can. So, right, those are the two communities that I think of that are much more difficult to reach out, because I tried and so far I didn't succeed. Of course, we will continue, but it has been quite difficult, and I understand it is something that we need to improve also as a space community in general, and not just the Lunar or Eagle one.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so I completely agree with everything Antonino said, and it really is difficult. So SJC is obviously a very global organization. Obviously, we're 14 people from 10 countries, but we try to kind of be the voice of, the most vocal and then the least vocal in the space kind of world. So a lot of our ideas revolve around things like inclusivity, benefit sharing, capacity building. And that's to recognize that, even though we have some giants today going to the moon or aspiring to go to the moon, we fully recognize that some nations aren't there yet. They haven't prioritized it yet. They don't have it's them yet, but we wanted to create something that going forward, really kind of helps build the more space aspiring nations rather than currently spacefaring ones too. So hopefully a lot of our principles that you could see in our report would potentially be the voice of those that we didn't get to interview, we didn't get to speak to. But that was really important for us, and we did. It was one of the first things I think we had consensus on as a group that should be at the forefront of our work.
Yeah, exactly. We tried to be as inclusive as possible.
You've got a report and a manifesto out. There were sort of three documents: that the report, the executive summary of the report, and this manifesto. Is the manifesto a direct output of the report?
I'd like Jenna to answer that because she directly worked on the manifesto. So I oversaw the thing, but I want to know what she thinks. How does she see it?
Yeah, so so the manifesto, in short, yes, they all are very much the same story, just in different levels of detail and different lengths, I guess. The manifesto was trying to be a bit more of a like visual, easily accessible, readable version of the exec sum in the report. But yeah, you'll be able to find like all the information about why our work is needed, action, some of the global priorities we threw, some of the key things that are important in a lunar charter that Antonino mentioned earlier, and a bit about the team. Right, it's one of the biggest advantages of like the group that we have, and this kind of thinking is it really is such a diverse team. So we wanted to really bring that out as a bit of a unique selling point of this work too. So a lot about the team and our background and kind of why we got involved. So all of that is in the manifesto, and it's easy to read. The reports and the exec sum is very wordy, but the manifesto is the more visual stuff. So yeah, it's very cool. But you can find all the info there too.
Yeah, we really wanted to reach different audiences, right? So the three documents, they, as Jenna said, they tell the same story, but they do it in a different way, and they speak to different people in a way. I think it's going to be hard to find somebody who read all the three of them in details and that can resonate with all of them. But for instance, the report will be very useful for the academic community, and people who want to know about lunar governance in details, and they want to have the information that they cannot find anywhere else, because to a certain extent, our report is a unique source of information, especially because of the global priorities and the results of the interviews that nobody else has ever done, not in the history of SGC, nor in the history of lunar governance. And so that's one type of document. And then the executive summary is for more decision makers, right? Because they still want to find out about the details and the concrete stuff, but they don't have time to read 50 pages, right? So they want to read a very short version that will tell them, this is what we want you to do, and this is why we want you to do it. And then you have the manifesto, which for me is one of the documents I am the most proud of, actually, because I love this type of visuals. I like to send a message and to tell a story, and I think manifesto does that in a beautiful way. And this is our let's say, introduction to the space community, to the people who are not familiar with the topic, who are not interested in knowing too much about it, but they want to know why lunar governance is important, what is our story, and how are we contributing to that. And the manifesto, I think, does that brilliantly. And so this is the one that will reach the most people, I think, the people who will not go into the details, but who will be concerned about our story, and hopefully will take action afterwards, because this is the core of our message, of our work. We don't think we have all the answers. Our report is very much a starting point, but what we want for the people to read and to understand is that they need to take action at different levels, in different ways, but we all need to start moving. And so I hope that the three documents can convey these messages to different audiences, so that we can have that inclusivity also achieved through the fact that we are able to speak to different people in the community.
You're giving a message there that obviously there's a kind of urgent need for action. So, in your opinion, what are the sort of what are the things that have come up while you're doing this? Looking into this, what are the things that have come up that you go, oh my God, we really need to sort this out because it's looking very shady.
I mean, I can jump in on that. So I actually think it's a common thing that we see in the space industry as a whole, right? Where technology moves at pace. People are inspired, they're passionate, people are very smart, very innovative. And so we want to get stuff out there, we want to get stuff moving. And then constantly trying to run behind and catch up, right? And you see this with space sustainability. You see it, I think you'll see it very soon with lunar governance and lunar activity. And so, you know, given the rise of commercialization, you know, obviously there's a whole host of private companies going to the moon, aiming to go to the moon in the next few years, next year and the year after. There really is a need not only to start figuring out the relationship between public and private entities and who is liable and where responsibility lies, but also, as Antonina said, that, you know, yes, we have several countries signed up to things like the Artemis Accords, but there's a whole load out there that aren't, right? If China are doing one thing, and America and Japan and all the other Artemis countries are doing another thing, at some point we're going to get a bit of a polarization where, you know, one half of the moon you're going to see one type of base, and on the other half you're going to see another type of base, and it's kind of like, guys, do you not see that we need something in between? So I think there is a need quite urgently, not only for things like private companies mining and, you know, how much water is available, and therefore is it a resource, and if it is a resource, who can use it and should they be able to use it, but it's also the polarization of nations and, you know, all the politics on earth that the political issues on earth that may come with. So it's really interesting, and I think the added difficulty that we have is that it was just so interesting debating about it lots and lots in our group, because I was kind of like, oh, you know, we need to concretely decide what's resources, and the rest, and like some of the team were like, we can't do that yet. And so it's just really making each other understand and appreciate how actually we don't know everything about the moon. And so putting together a perfect governance for it is so difficult. So it's going to have to keep evolving. But that doesn't mean that we need to stall until we get there, right? Like, we can try and get ahead of it. We can try and, you know, push things through in parallel. But it is a bit of a, you know, oh, we don't want to go yet because we don't know, but oh, we need to go because things are happening. So in this weird little, we need to act, we kind of know we need to act, we don't know how to act situation. So Antonina very bravely stepped up and decided to do something about it. But no, it's I think there definitely is a need very soon, especially with resources.
Yeah, couldn't explain it any better.
Because I complimented you halfway through, that's why.
Yeah, but yeah, and really the message is that the first missions will start over the next years and then decades, but diplomacy is very slow. This is something that I can tell you, being involved in it. And so if we don't start now, it will be really late when we actually have everybody already acting on the moon. So to add to all that Jenna said, and I completely agree, is that you have really no idea how slow is diplomacy. And so that is why I felt the urgency, because some people, you know, may actually look at the plans and say, hey, we have a couple of rovers going there, just doing, you know, the scouting, the prospecting. It's going to be fine for the next 5 to 10 years. It's still enough time. But believe me, 5 to 10 years in diplomacy, it's really, really not enough to develop the regulation you need to ensure that there is going to be no conflicts and that the moon will remain the peaceful environment has been so far. And so that is why we have the urgency. It has to be, let's say, related and contextualized with the path that diplomacy has. And it is not that we can skip that. That's the thing for me, right? Because some people will say, okay, just screw up the international space law process. Let's just go with states and we'll figure it out. That would be a mistake. Giving up just because we don't think we can do this on time and we don't want to pressure the beginning, that would be a mistake, because we will regret it once we're going to have states polarized, as Jenna said, once we're going to have interferences, once we're going to have criticism on the resources, retortions, and the situation can really escalate very quickly. So that's why we need to act now, because we understand that it's going to take time for us to agree on what we want to see on the moon, even at a very basic level. And the process needs to start now because it's worth it. That's also the point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always sitting here thinking, you know, you've got commercial players now as well, which are actually
Mm-hmm.
poised to be probably overtaking, national players in terms of their ability to get to the moon and do stuff on the moon. So, and obviously, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're kind of covered by the nation state that they that they live in. But like, if Elon Musk, for want of a better person, decided to go rogue a little bit on the moon and sort of play fast and loose with some of this stuff, it's not like the American government is going to suddenly go round his house with tanks. So who the heck enforces that kind of stuff?
That's the question. This is actually the question of my PhD. So you're gonna have to wait until it's finished. And I'll tell you.
Matt casually asking a PhD level question in
the simple answer is that nobody has the power to enforce anything on the moon in place, for many reasons. Technical reasons, we don't even know how that would work, and legal reasons, because according to international space law, the moon shall be used exclusively for peaceful purposes. And so there is at the moment no legitimacy to go there and exercise the use of force for any reason, actually. But thankfully, we have pretty much convincing elements to force or to enforce certain regulation on Earth, because at the end of the day, people operating on the moon, they have their assets on Earth, they have their people on Earth. At some point, they have to come back, and so that's our grip, to make them do and play by the rules. And I can tell you that the U.S. government has many obviously issues in many things, but in space they're trying to play by the rules as much as they can. And so that's why actually Elon is always complaining about the FAA and the rules and the fact that in this way we'll never become a multiplanetary species and whatnot. He complains about, but they will make sure that he plays by the rules, because it's their international reputation at stake. So they are responsible for whatever they will do on the moon, and they don't want to be blamed for something bad happening. So that's a guarantee that at least commercial players will be kept in check for the time being. Then once we have an actual, economy developed on the moon and fully operational there, it will be a different story, but it will also be a problem for the next, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 years minimum.
Yeah, I mean, the only issue I'd take with it is that obviously, if Elon Musk is generating a huge amount of money for the economy, then doesn't also the American government, in the same way, in some ways, that Elon Musk has been very persuasive with the legal institutions anyway, in terms of the stuff that he's doing with his mega constellations, etc., etc. I mean, I'm not completely finger wagging at the US and Elon Musk, because I'm sure it's a completely universal phenomena that you have commercial players and really it's the money that talks. So there must be something in what you've done to kind of address that element of it, because how do you stop runaway capitalism, I suppose, on the, I don't like to use the word capitalism, but runaway kind of money making on the moon, where you, in the same way that we've had it on Earth. I mean, it's not like we've not been very good at protecting environments on the Earth, let alone on somewhere where there's no indigenous people or no neighbors and everything else. It seems like it'll be very hard for it not to become a free-for-all, a dangerous free-for-all.
Jenna has the background to answer this better than me, but my simple answer is that at the moment there's no money to be made on the moon. Like, not a single penny. There's nothing.
Great, thanks for that, Antonino.
Nothing. Can you tell me, nobody has an actual business model to make a lot of money on the moon? The honest company you speak to, they will tell you it's going to take decades before we can make a single profit. And in the meantime, we need governments to fund us and to support us, because, you go to the moon, you take the ice, who are you going to sell it to? What are you going to do with it? And it's already costing millions of dollars to go there. So you can tell me.
Yeah, I think there is an element of, to Matt, I completely see your point, and it's something that I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not the most. My instinct would be like, we should have something binding and people should be punished. And in reality, this is the UN, so we're limited by how aggressive I can be. But anyway, when it comes to private companies, I think the one thing that could be really powerful is if investors have the right ethics, right? Because a company should be backed by investors only if they have adhered to everything, if they are responsible, if they know that they're not going to mine something that's just either not going to have any value because it's technically illegal on Earth, or it's just going to go on the black market or anything like that, right? So I think here, yes, the private companies need to have some sort of some accountability, but hopefully the companies and the private companies that don't have the right ethics or the right intent or the right morals won't be backed. And it's up to the investors to really make sure that, they're confident that their company goes to the moon. It's going to be the right way. It's going to be a valuable product, and it's going to be a legit product. So I think it's hopefully the whole business ecosystem. But you're right in that like a lot of the thinking that we did was kind of like, even if you say that a company can operate for a certain amount of time in a certain place, and then it's limited in terms of what activity they can do. Even if we go that far and try to limit that, how do you ensure that the company is operating sustainably, right? So if they're gonna mine something, how do we know that they're not going to completely obliterate it for 5 years, leave it in some sort of crazy state, and then it's just not their problem? And that's why it's all to do with the wording. It's all to do with exactly how this, if the charter does go through or it is adopted, this idea of a charter, how it's set up. But it really is like everything we tried to mitigate or come up with, we were kind of like, oh, but the private companies could just do their own thing. So we did try that. No, but we did try. But I think it's everyone being accountable across the whole business ecosystem, not and making sure that everyone is enforcing it when someone kind of strays away a little bit. So hopefully that helps, and someone along the chain has a good sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess eco business systems though are a bit like nations in the fact that there's many of them and fractured all over the place.
Yeah, this is it. And so, it's partly due to the fact that actually going to the moon, there's little opportunity for differentiation right now. So as weird as it sounds, there really is. So, hopefully as this kind of rush continues, and as this lunar kind of economy matures a little bit, we'll get to see a bit more of a consolidation, a concentration, a bit more cooperation, rather than all these little startups doing their own thing and running riot.
But, Jenna brought a good point that the financial part will play a role. In mining, in current temporary mining on Earth, you cannot invest, you cannot get certain funding if you don't comply with certain standards, right? Like the JORC standard, for instance, in the system of terrestrial mining. And so iSpace is trying to do the same thing. So they have a project for the development of standards for sustainable and responsible mining on the moon. And the idea is that the standards could be adopted at a broader level. And so if you don't follow the standards, you don't get the funding, you don't get the license, you don't get anything. And so this comes from the company itself, right? It's not coming from any government. It's not coming from a separate actor. It's the company that recognizes the value in understanding and playing by certain rules that everybody agrees. And I'll tell you another thing, which is that, space and the moon especially, it's a very public environment. When operations will start on the moon, everyone will look at them. Everyone will keep an eye on whatever is happening on the moon. If you screw up and people find out, it's going to be a major thing it's going to be everywhere. People will notice. And so companies don't want that. They don't want the bad publicity. They don't want to be in the bad outlook that will come if they do something bad, because there's no way to cover up, right? And so this is also a natural incentive for them to play well, because they understand that if they don't, they're going to be in the public eye and they're going to be trashed. And so that's another element to keep into account. And I'm actually writing a paper for the next International Astronautical Congress about the application of game theory reasoning to whistleblowing or cartel behaviors on the moon. And so, like when you want to do something bad, what's going to be your options, and do you have more to gain or to lose in also like surveilling each other among companies or carteling, right? Where will companies tend to be? Normally, they tend to cartel, but I argue that in a special environment like the moon, there is more incentive to actually, spot the others rather than carteling with them.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought
Wow.
I'd hear the word cartel and
Yeah.
moon in the same sentence.
Right? But we have to, yeah.
Very
yeah, I mean,
helpful.
you for me hit a kind of nail on the head in the fact that currently there is no way to make money on the moon, and it's quite hard to think of ways that you could really. Won't some people think that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to come up with like a moon charter, as something that everyone can stick to, because it's still such an unknown thing. I mean, I don't doubt that there will be something that comes along and everyone goes, right, that's how you make money from it. It's like, trying to think of Bitcoin before Bitcoin existed is impossible, right? but someone's making money. But so I guess there will be a lunar equivalent to that. So yeah, I mean, does that play into it, the fact that really it's an unknown about how it will really actually look?
It definitely does. I think the best way to kind of think of it, it's going to sound a bit strange, but if you think of an amusement park or a theme park, it's kind of like, why would you go? And then you kind of can apply the same logic to the moon of why, like, you're not making money, why would you go, right? And you make money from, whether it's an amusement park or it's the moon, people will always want to experience that. There will always be this fascination to expand onto other planets, to expand humankind, to set up a moon base. And so actually the way you make money is less of a direct monetization, like a product or a specific service that you can mine from the moon and sell. You may be able to do that, great. But there's going to be a lot of revenue coming through from other markets, right? So it's like the construction, the power, the
communication,
the vacuum service, actually everything that you can imagine making money on Earth. If you create a lunar economy sophisticated enough, there will be revenue streams for you. And so for a lot of terrestrial companies, I mean, the ideal is they have their income statements and their balance sheets, and the moon is just like another line in it. So if a terrestrial company can make money on Earth by providing fans, by providing electricity, providing comms, then they can do the same on the moon. And so it's less of a direct, let's mine this material and it will be worth billions. It's all these other peripheral things for the economy.
Yeah, well, I suppose I could be a moon gig promoter. I could start having bands up there.
Yeah, exactly. Do it. You provide entertainment. You could be, 100%.
Yeah, it's going to have to be some fee, isn't it, to get haul their bodies up there.
Be paid in a moon journey.
It's in the title, right? So the title of EAGLE is Effective and Adaptive Governance for a Lunar Ecosystem. So what just Jenna explained is in our title, is in what we think should happen, right? Adaptiveness is a key element. Of course, we don't know at the moment what's gonna happen on the moon over the next 10 to 15 years in terms of how it will all play out. But this is fine, and that's why we are looking for adaptive governance. And this is why we came up with a lunar charter and not a specific lunar code, for instance, right? We came up with something that will define the starting point for future incremental regulation. But we need to start somewhere, and not just because we need to start, but because if we leave all actors free to develop their own thing, the risk of divergence will be too high. And again, we end up with conflicts which we want to avoid and which are not good for business anyways, right? So the charter gives a framework, gives the boundaries of like, okay, this is the basic things that we agree upon that we're not going to do on the moon or that we want to do with the moon. And then you fill the details, right? And you're free to do that based on the experience that you gain. And then you can increase and revise whatever you have done. But still that general framework that we are proposing with the charter can be developed now, because we already know now that we don't want to screw up with certain areas of the moon. We already know now that we definitely want to encourage private actors to participate in lunar activities, but that we want to do that at certain conditions, right? And this will not change in the future, or shouldn't change, I hope. And so we can start with that. And then we say, okay, specifically, your mining site will be 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers or 5 kilometers, depending on how much we understand that we can mine and how much you can stay there and so on and so forth, right? But the fact that there has to be a limit, that's already, that we can already agree upon that. And so then we find the details later on. And the second thing that Jenna said is the ecosystem, which for us is it's very important, right? We want to develop the moon in a circular way, as an environment where the pieces fit together. Because the moon, if it's a very fragile environment, it's also a very hostile environment, and it's small. Everything that you do on the moon will impact the others somehow, especially certain activities like landing or taking off. You're going to shake the entire surface of the moon when you're going to put a starship there. And so it's insane to imagine that you will not have a mechanism to inform the others, to coordinate with the others, and to make sure that you're not screwing up other operations. And so those are the things that we propose, and those are the things that everybody needs to keep in mind when engaging in lunar activities, including companies, because it's in their own interest. And then if we manage to have terrestrial companies integrated, that's where the actual economy can kick off, right? And this is one thing that we really need to work better on, because very few space companies have the ability to speak to terrestrial counterparts and say, hey, there is a place for you in this. And, there is value in what we're doing because you can reapply it on Earth, or the technology you're using here on Earth, that could be used on space. And Toyota is a great example of that. They are going to provide a movable lunar habitat for JAXA, which is based on technologies that they will reuse for excursions on Earth and having vehicles that can go through deserts and extreme environments. And so they already understand that type of approach, which we think can really be a game changer, especially in the context of the moon. And finally, the profit, I don't think, will be the main driver, because if you want money, you can do a lot of things on Earth. You don't have to go to space to make money. That's not the point at the moment. Companies that are interested in space activities have different visions, different values. And so, of course, profit is important, because otherwise you have no business model and you don't survive. But I feel that the actors that are involved at the moment, they see things in a different perspective. So they want to make profit, but they also want to achieve other goals. As Jenna said, they want to expand humankind. They have this vision of making humanity a multiplanetary species, or whatnot you want to believe in, of course. But if you want to make easy money, you don't go to space, right? You just go somewhere else. And so that's what I think will drive them to behave in a certain way, because those are not the type of companies that look for easy money. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there.
When you started this process, is there something that you sort of held dear, and by the end of the process, you'd abandoned
Jenna?
So I, quite honestly, I thought that, I think it's not so much holding dear, but I naively thought that we would come out with like a perfect answer framework, set of 10 very mutually exhaustive and but a very nice set of like 10 principles or 20 principles that everyone can apply to, and it's very easy, and if you don't stick to them you're going to get arrested, and then very quickly I was like, that's not the way this works. There's a reason this hasn't been done before. So I think I originally thought that we were gonna come out with this perfect a perfect answer, and actually by the end of it I realized that no, the best thing we can do to actually help the world thinking through this is come up with a way to think about the answer, right. Which is the Lunar Charter. And I think that for me was the difference, that going in I thought we could solve it. Coming out, I think we have a good answer to help solve it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that's really cool. What were you? About you,
it's
Anthony?
Difficult to say, because when I started this, I had a lot of expectations and things in my mind, and I am a very impatient person. So perhaps the one thing that I abandoned throughout the process was the idea that we could achieve an immediate result at the international level in a short time frame. Because I understood as I spoke with actors that this thing can start now, but it needs more time to actually, be developed in an actual framework, even if it's not even binding. And so that was one thing that I probably had to digest. And that's how also we came up with the idea of the charter, because it's something that is a starting point. It's not something that you have to just subscribe and that's it, and say thank you so much for having invented this. It's something that it's going to be evolving. And so the one thing that I changed throughout the way is that I realized that we need to have an evolving thing. And originally, I thought that we could come up with something that, as Jenna said, that could be just written down and then people can follow through. And that didn't really work. And I think it's good that we learned, because now we made a meaningful contribution. And that was one of the elements that distinguished our report from other documents, which are just a set of things, and you do them and you're gonna be fine. And that's not as simple.
Do you think things like the Outer Space Treaty and the Artemis Accords in that framework then have actually been really successful in what they did in terms of, or what they are, in fact, like the Outer Space Treaty? Is it actually a pretty good achievement?
As a lawyer, I can tell you yes, because I'm a huge fan of the Outer Space Treaty, but I'm a bit biased, right? So I can give you reasons why I think it succeeded, but I'm curious to hear what Jenna says, not coming from the law perspective.
Yeah, no, I do think there are good mechanisms, because I think honestly it would have kind of descended into chaos if we didn't have the Outer Space Treaty to start with. And I think actually the Outer Space Treaty has done a very good job at filling the role of kind of how we've progressed space so far. We've stayed in Earth orbit mainly. That's like a flourishing ecosystem. Other parties have kind of got involved in the UN and I think from that perspective, I think the Outer Space Treaty has been a great starting point. I do think it's a little bit outdated, just because if you think about the specifics of where we're heading with, for example, lunar mining of water that can power the so on, I think it's not as tight as it needs to be. So I do think that for to date, the Outer Space Treaty has done a great job. And what our Eagle report is talking about actually is very much in conjunction with the Outer Space Treaty. So we're we talk a lot about it. We're fans of it on the whole. With the Artemis Accords, it's interesting because a lot of the feedback. So I'm not going to the feedback that we heard from other people is that it's and this is quite widely or publicly shared, that it's quite US centric. I don't think it means to be. One of the specific questions that we asked was kind of, why do you think more people haven't signed up to it? And the answer was, we don't know, because we think it's actually very inclusive. Hopefully it's just the right thing. So I do think that they are helpful. But I think it's just a matter of making sure that if we're going to put something out there that we want to be adopted internationally, it really is international. And I think for you to achieve that, or for anyone to achieve that, it has to be in mind with other stakeholders, right? So, to get someone like China or Russia or India's buy-in, they're going to need the input from Point Dot. And so I think our space treaty, especially, as I said, has done its job. I think Artemis has tried to be helpful. Don't know if it's quite there, even though I'm a fan of the Artemis Accords. I don't know if it's quite there yet, just purely from what we've heard. But yeah, I think our report very much is in support of the treaty, and some of the things such as the protection of human life, where we think definitely should extend to the Lunar Charter that we're suggesting. So you'll see a lot of familiar language in what we talk about.
Right. I'm just gonna add on the Artemis Accords, because I think on the Outer Space Treaty, Jenna summarized it brilliantly. So that's exactly what we're trying to do. It's integrating the treaty, but building upon it. On the Artemis Accords, I personally am a fan of the document. I think they mean well. They are a useful document, especially as a Kickstarter of the conversation. But as everything is that comes from states can be misunderstood or misinterpreted because of politics, right? So there are some things that I think the Artemis Accords could have done better. Because I think it was meant as a starter for a broader conversation. And so on the one hand, this is a document that is meant to regulate the execution of the Artemis program. So it makes sense that the people who are working on it are those who are paying for the Artemis program, those who thought about it, those who want to do it, because they're just talking about how we're going to do our mission on the moon in a way that is compatible with international space law. This is a series of principles. If you want to partner with us to do the program, this is how we want to do it. And this makes perfect sense. The problem is that because it comes from such an influential nation like the United States, because of the massive publicity and outreach that they do, then it's perceived as something else. It's perceived as an attempt to define the rules that will apply to everybody, and the rules that will then be imposed just as a matter of fact, because the US is there and their allies is there and they're powerful and they're doing things first. And so the way that they're going to design in the Artemis Accords will end up to be the way that everybody will have to follow. Which is a risk, but I don't think it's a risk that they want to go through, right? I don't think this is the way they see the Artemis Accords. They see it in a different way, and then they, I think, also recognize that it's not possible for everybody to sign up on the Accords. But I think it's possible to do a conversation based on the Accords, and then other countries can build upon the Accords to do their own thing. The China and Russia, they have announced an international lunar research station. They're going to have a legally binding agreement to be signed by the end of the year, deciding on how they want to operate on the moon in the terms of their partnership. And then other countries will join, and they will also have other legal documents. So they're going to be like the Artemis Accords. In a way, that's fine. What we want to achieve with the Charter is to make sure that the Artemis Accords and the Lunar Research Station and any other document governing further programs will be on the same page on the fundamental things. Because this is the point. They all are attempts at interpreting the Outer Space Treaty, but the Outer Space Treaty is a general treaty on principles. And so it can be interpreted in so many different ways that legally they're all legit, because there is no state who can, raise the hand and say, I have the right interpretation and you have the wrong one, because they don't have the power to do that. In international law, it doesn't work like that. So what we want to do is, okay, guys, you will end up with your own thing for your own program. That's fine. But just make sure that we all start from the same assumptions, that we all have the same ideas of what we want to do and what we don't want to have to do. And so that's really the idea of the Charter and how it relates to the Outer Space Treaty. It kind of stays in the middle between the Outer Space Treaty and documents like the Artemis Accords. It stays there because it ensures that everyone is playing by the same interpretation, or not, if it's not exactly the same compatible one.
The one thing I'll add, which I think is super interesting actually, which is Antonio is right in that the Artemis Accords was very much, for the Artemis program, and then kind of, it expanded and it has stronger, obviously, links to NASA. I think this has caused quite a lot of confusion for the public, because I know, for example, in England, or in the UK, I should say, there was a whole hoo-ha and celebration when the UK signed up to the Artemis Accords. And so many people are like, oh, we're going to the moon. And I'm like, oh, are we? That's great news. So many people are kind of, you think you're signing up to the Artemis Accords, and you've got to be very clear that you're signing up to Artemis Accords, TBD program. And so I think terminology, whilst NASA had the really best intentions, and as I said, I'm a fan of the Artemis Accords, I think things like that, especially for outside the US, people need to be very careful about, because people love the idea of going, it's the glory days, everyone calls it the glory days, and so a lot of people think that the UK and other countries have signed up to go to the moon, and it's great. Didn't know that. Wonderful.
What can people do? You said right at the beginning that there was a kind of call to action, really. So what can listeners and people at university and all those kind of people interested in space, what do you actually want them to do other than read the reports? But what else can they do? Where can they read the reports actually?
Right.
Where should they go?
Yay! Go, Anthony, go. I'm so happy that you asked this.
First of all, they can read their documents and they can find them online. So if you go to www.spacegeneration.org/eagle, you're going to find our webpage on the SGAC website, and then you can find everything about our team and our documents. And then if you add /documents to that address that I sent before, you go directly to our 3 deliverables. You can download them for free on the internet. And then on that page, if you scroll down a little bit, you can sign up to become an Eagle advocate. And that's what I would ask the people listening here to do. If you agree with our mission, if you would like to support our work, reach out to us. We're currently inviting everyone in the space community, but also beyond the space community, to say, hey, I'm interested. I want to help. This is what I can do. And please let me know. And so this is what you can do at the moment. If you're passionate about this, if you want to play a role, reach out to us, because we are currently collecting people that would like to support our work, and we will find a way with you to see how we can begin to implement this at the national level, at the institutional levels, because of course we are participating in the international process, which takes time. But we don't want to just wait and see, or sit down and just say, okay, let's do it in 10 years, because that's how long it takes in diplomacy. In the meantime, we want to do action. And so people can reach out, and we will find a way to integrate them in this process to become Eagle advocates, and then we'll find a place for you in our community, and hopefully we can do something together with your own activities. We want to fit in the broader picture of other space activities, of other advocacies. We want to be on the same page with that. And so this is my first point. And then the second point is, even if you don't trust us, if you don't want to become an official advocate, if you read the report and you do that with an open mind, I'm sure you will find something that you agree, and something that you think could be done, and something that it's maybe related to what you do. And so just take action on that, and think about it. For instance, we have a lot of discussion on standards and developing interoperable standards for human life protection, for systems compatibility. Even if you don't care about Eagle, if you don't want to be involved actively, or you don't want your name associated with our work, and you agree still with the fact that there needs to be a certain degree of interoperability to ensure that humans on the moon will not die because they cannot plug into the other life support system, then and you work in that, or you work close to that, you can do something about it. And there is going to be plenty of that in the report that you can pick and choose. So if you don't want to be part of the broader movement, of the bigger picture, find your battle, right? And find it in the report, and push it through. And then if you need any help from us, we'll be happy to provide it.
Absolutely. And then I would just add to that we're also on Twitter, so you can follow us on Twitter. And then, as Antonino said, I think it's really just about, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background is, no matter what your age is, really just think about, the moon is all of ours, and what's important to you, right? If you're an artist, if you're, I don't know, a poet, someone that we haven't reflected, or you have a different perspective, or even if you are an engineer or a lawyer and have come from one of the same backgrounds as one of us, but you see something, or something that's important to you is not reflected in our work or anywhere else, that needs to be called out. It needs to be included somewhere, right? So it's really a matter of also just going away and thinking about personally, what, given the moon is everyone's, what is important for you in humanity returning back, and just making sure that it's heard. And as Antonino said, Eagles very much stand behind everyone that's trying to get their voice heard, and we're very happy to hear it. So we're very open to incorporating the weird and the wonderful.
What's happening to it at the United Nations? So you sort of hand this in at the United Nations, and they have a look at it, and they either stick it in the bin or go, oh, this is really handy.
We get lots of red pen back and a grade at the end, and then
oh yeah, you got a 2-2.
Yeah. This is actually a good question that perhaps I can take. So the process at the United Nations works like that. There is a committee, which is the United Nations for Users of Outer Space, which is entrusted with the development of new rules of international space law, because it's the only place where I think now it's 95 countries that can meet and discuss together in an inclusive way and develop rules by consensus. Now, what we have done is we have reached out to the committee, because SGC is an observer to the committee. So only states can be actively engaged in the work of the committee, in the sense that they can vote and they can decide what the committee should do or should not do. But there is a range of people on institutions, actually, from the international community that can become observers. And observers in the old days, they were just observing. Now we're also trying to promote our view and to offer help to the committee in order to do their work and to promote the development of new international space law. And so we have reached out. We said we have this document. We would like for you to consider it, and we have certain suggestions for you. We would like for you to consider this issue from an international law perspective, so that we can develop rules. And we think that a way to do these rules is the charter. And so what we've done in practice is presenting this in many different ways. So the committee works in plenary session. And so in the plenary session, there are formal statements which are included in the official reporting of the committee. And so SGC during that phase said, talk about our work. And so said, we have this team, we have developed this work. We want to engage with all the interested delegations, and we want to develop a concrete result on lunar governance. And so that was one. And then following up, we had a technical presentation, which is not a plenary type of discussion, but it's more focused on delegations who are interested to listen about a specific topic. They come and then they can listen and eventually ask questions and then reach out. So we have done that as well. Then we also submitted the document in written forms so that it's now officially part of the United Nations document of the committee. And then every state can have a look and see if they agree or disagree and reach out to us if they ask questions. And then this was the general plan. But then this year, there also has been a quite intense and interesting discussion on the establishment of a working group on space resources, right? Because this is one of the hot topics that is discussed at the moment at the legal subcommittee of COPUS. And so during the consultations on space resources, we had the opportunity to intervene as well, which is something that rarely happens. So I also would like to thank, the moderators, because we have been the only observer who has been allowed to speak up during the consultations, and this is usually at the discretion of the moderators of the event. But they are very, very good friends of SGC, and also a good friend of mine, Stephen Freeland and Andrei Mitstyle. In a moment where states were not eager to speak, we got the opportunity to present our views. And so also there we said, okay, we understand it's important to have a working group on space resources, but please bear in mind that space resources are connected with a lot of different topics. And so it's important that you consider those when you will develop the regulation of space resources. And at the same time, it's important to consider space resources in a specific environment. So not just space resources as a thing that exists in theory, but space resources on the moon. Because if you do space resources on the moon, it's going to be very different than the way you will do it on Mars or on asteroids. And so you need to keep that in mind when you want to develop good regulation, because otherwise you will come up with something which is unpractical. So we got that opportunity, and now the working group has been created, and so we are in touch again with the leadership of the working group to find a way to include our contributions. So that, of course, depends on the decision of states. And again, we are very mindful and respectful of the process of diplomacy, but we think we can help. And I have to say, although I cannot make any specific names, but many delegations reach out to us, complimenting the report and supporting the document and enjoying the idea of the charter. But of course, from that to actually have it implemented, it takes time, because this is political decisions, and even if the delegates themselves like it, it has to go back to their countries, to their ministries. It is something that is not just decided in a minute. It takes some time, but we are involved in that process. We have our hands there, and hopefully we can give meaningful contributions to that process there. And then in the meantime, there are other organizations which are working on this on so many levels. There is the Global Expert Group on Sustainable Lunar Activities, on which I'm part, which is trying to do a similar thing, right? Providing COPUS with some concrete suggestions to ensure the sustainability of lunar activities. And so there, I say, we have this report, we have this document, we can find a way to integrate this in the work of this group. Recently I presented the work of the Eagle team to the International Space Exploration Coordination Group, which is a group uniting many space agencies all around the world, because they heard about it and they were interested. And of course, they will not care for any actual legal document to be developed, but if they read the report, they can find out things that are relevant to them. As I said before, they can start to think about, in practical terms, how to implement the idea of interoperability or human life protection or heritage protection. These are practical things. They don't need a formal legal document to do that. And so reading the report, they keep it in mind. We have other talks with other institutions all around the world. We want to engage with national regulators as well. So really, it is a living process which has to go through many different avenues. And then hopefully, in some time, we will see the bigger picture connecting the dots, and it will make sense.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm actually amazed that sounds like you've made some absolutely huge inroads. Then it's not met with the eye rolling of the United Nations going, oh, who are these kids or something like that. But it's actually sort of, it's spread quite deep and far.
Yeah, it's really surreal that I'm you kind of scroll through LinkedIn and you see people that you kind of met here and there, and very senior people sharing our report that didn't have any involvement with it. We didn't bribe them to do it, but they're actually, a lot of people really believe in it. And it's so like, it's so wonderful to see that, you know, because I mean, for me anyway, it sounds like Antonino knew exactly what he was doing this whole time. Like he's a pro. But for me, I felt like I was just making it up and winging it and kind of, is this right? And I think this is right. And my gut's telling me this. And, you know, and there was a lot of, as I said before, there was a lot of debate, there was a lot of discussion. And so to actually see that where we ended up resonates with people, it's just awesome. It really is so powerful that, you know, this work, it really doesn't feel like it's just going to be shelved and just, you know, the one thing that I was that given how fragmented, this just comes in a nice, beautiful circle, this conversation, given how fragmented the lunar landscape governance, the lunar governance landscape is, I was genuinely worried that it's just going to be another one of those, right? And we're just going to add to that pile of people trying to solve something. And actually, it really feels like something different. And I know I'm part of it, and I'm very much tooting our own horn. But I genuinely think it's a really cool document. So yeah, I feel like it has got traction.
This makes me very emotional. Well, and I would like to just.
Oh, it's okay.
I just would like to take one moment to acknowledge and thank all the members of the Eagle team, you know, because this really has been an amazing team effort. And so today you heard from me and from Jenna, but please go to our website and look at the other people because it's really an amazing team effort, and we would have not done it without the 14 amazing individuals that we got in the team. And I'm so grateful for them. You know, when I started this whole thing 1 year ago, I didn't know who would have applied, you know, like I was like, what if I don't get any good people, you know, like what if they are all crazy or they don't know what they're doing and stuff. But when I saw the applications and I went through it, and then when we started the work and I listened through the hearings, the questions that they were asking, I was like, I think we're going to do something good here because we have good people. And so I'm very grateful for that to all of them.
Yeah, they really are. Like, I think working in the past year with this group, so inspiring. It's actually insane. Like how Antonino just spoke, and I'm like, wow. I feel like that about everyone of all of our group. We really are the smartest, brightest, most energetic, sometimes most annoying people. But it was great. It was a great recipe.
And every group effort has, you know, difficult moments. You know, we had those, and that's only normal. It's also, I think, a good sign that we're alive and we're not just saying yes to each other for the pleasure of saying that, but we speak our mind, and sometimes minds clash. But we managed to overcome that. So I will tell you that, of course, we have been very stressed throughout the entire process. I will not deny that, but it was good because it meant that it was creative. It was going to something. And now what I'm actually looking forward is to celebrate with these people, you know, because we imagine we have done all of this during a pandemic at home.
We've never
met. And so that's crazy for me. You know, I feel that I know these people for ages now, and we haven't met. So I really look forward to have a beer with them and to have dinner and celebrate and go dancing maybe. You know, just I want to do normal stuff also with this group. And I look forward to the IEC for that.
Well, I'll tell you what we could do. I could promote the gig on the moon, and we could all go there. Right? It's going to be amazing.
But imagine we did all of this sober. Imagine the conversations we could have and what we'd come out with.
Oh yeah, see, it's either you do it on booze or coffee, isn't it? That's
yeah, exactly. We need to transition to the former a little bit more and see. We do the exact same thing, so like a little bit tipsy, and see what
we'll write a manifesto 2.0, the drug version of it.
Yeah. And then wake up in the morning and go, what have we done?
Oh god. No, I think lunar governance is a bit of a prickly topic for some people. It's a bit of an abstract topic. So I mean, hopefully if people haven't thought about it after listening to a podcast, they will at least give it a little bit of thought, even if they don't read our report, which I encourage you to do. But
well, I'll tell you what's quite fascinating. Whenever we have a sort of legal episode, I tend to get more emails than other episodes, and I think it's because there's some real there's often very strong opinions out there. So it'll be interesting to see,
Right.
what we get on it. So yeah, I'll keep you posted. I'll keep you posted and give you the
Yeah,
opportunity to
please
reply.
do so. We also have an email address, so if people want to reach out, they can also reach out at eagle@spacegeneration.org. So that could be another way to spare you some of the annoying comments.
Yeah, direct your angry emails to us, not Matt.
I promise we'll get back to everybody. But this was fun. Thank you so much for having us. I really enjoyed the conversation.
The Interplanetary podcast is alive!
There you go, George. There was the interview. What did you think?
It was great.
George, if people want to listen to the Interplanetary podcast, where can they go?
They can go to www.interplanetary.org.uk.
It's almost like you put too many W's there. And if they want to get really involved, they can join us on the Discord. If they join us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/interplanetary. And it'd be ever so much fun to see you all there. George, what are you doing this week? Are you off school?
I am off school, yeah.
And then you're doing what?
Climbing Ben Nevis.
You're almost going to be in space. You don't even need Virgin Galactic.
I mean, I don't think it's not even like 10% of the way there.
Not even 1%.
No, I think it is.
Now, how many miles high is Ben Nevis? It's certainly not it can't be a mile high, can it?
Well,
Right, look it up.
Well, the space is 100 kilometers up.
NASA will give you astronaut wings if you go over this 80 kilometers, whereas the International define it as the Kármán line. But Kármán himself
disagrees.
Defined it at about 86 or something like that. So
yeah, but the inventor of the GIF pronounces it GIF.
Yeah, so who knows? Yeah,
so
exactly.
The creator can never really.
The creator can go do one. Yeah. right. Well, before we go, let's look up the Ben Nevis height and see what percentage of a. It is 1,345 meters.
It's about 16.8%.
Quarter of a million. What's 17% of quarter of a million? It's like that's the kind of trip you're going for.
But then maybe it's a logarithmic increase in cost the higher you go.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. So I mean, you're doing a £4,203 trip.
We have to take into account.
Yeah, it must be logarithmic, Matt. Yeah, it must be logarithmic. Right. Bye.
Goodbye.